Rated M for mature.
Well, let's get this started. Welcome to Playing Dead Live. I'll be your host, AJ Locascio. All right, so this is going to be an hour-long panel, 35 minutes for discussion, 25-minute Q&A. We'll be joined by Kevin Bruner, the co-founder of Telltale Games. And please hold all your questions to the last 25 minutes with the Q&A. You know, that's how that works. Usually we tape these and I do a bunch of takes, so I'm going to screw up saying a lot of this stuff, so just embrace that, please.
One Playing Dead episode takes like the length of 10 Playing Dead episodes.
Oh, it's horrible.
So.
It's really bad. Yeah. It's like, on this episode of Playing Walking, it's bad. Anyway, this is an M-rated game, so this is going to be an M-rated panel, so if anybody is under the age of 17 without a parent or a guardian, or who is not cool with violence and this baby right here, get out of here with your baby. They're going to soak all this in and just start killing. It's bad. But if you're offended by cursing, violence, and possibly some male nudity, you should... No, I'm kidding. That's what I'm really here for. But please leave now if you're offended by any of that. We also will not be discussing episode 3 since it just came out. We don't want to spoil it for anyone. Wow, I got an applause. But yeah, if you have any questions about it or you want to talk to anyone about it, talk to the Telltale guys over at the booth. They'll be happy to chat with you. Now let's get this started. Joining me to my right, we've got Jake Rodkin and Sean Vanneman. They are the lead game designers on Walking Dead, as well as the beautiful and bored-looking Gary Whitta over there. Are you all right? Gary wrote episode 4. He's also the story consultant on the entire Walking Dead season. And Gary wrote Book of Eli. Am I embarrassing you, Gary? Stop writing notes about me. You wrote Book of Eli?
This is important that we show this. This is me writing down no Ep3 to myself, because they're all in my head like the same thing. So it's like no Ep3, and then Gary added or 405, which would be bad. Yeah.
So then when Lee explodes, sorry, I'm sorry!
We just said no Ep5.
I'm sorry, Clementine, and that's just... It's like the Death Star. All right, let's move on. So, what? Jake and Sean, tell me exactly, what do you guys do on a day-to-day basis? What are your responsibilities on Walking Dead?
I would also like to know that.
Yes, I have no idea what you guys do. It's like our 6th interview together, and I'm like, I still don't know what these guys do.
Kevin's actually going to transcribe everything we say and go, oh, okay, that's what we hired you guys to do. So, Jake and I... Okay, I'm generally in charge of sort of the story and writing, but we've done a lot of that together with Gary. And we lead the team in sort of how to make some creative choices in the game.
It sounds like we don't do anything.
Yeah, really.
It's just really hard. There's just a lot of work to do. We've kind of divided, like, at the beginning, when we were talking about making a Walking Dead game, it was kind of just Jake and I in a room waiting for somebody to pay attention to us, and then our friend Chuck Jordan was contracted to come in and give us some ideas too, which was awesome.
So we sat around for weeks and weeks and weeks with a lot of whiteboards and Post-it notes trying to figure out what the hell happens across the season. And then at some point, people started giving us people to actually make a game, so...
Yeah, we pitched the story to Robert Kirkman and then had lunch with Gary and was like, oh, he's a cool dude who likes games and knows The Walking Dead, and all this sort of worked out. It was really great. But day to day, it's a lot of playing the episodes, giving a lot of direction, giving feedback. I go into like a weird cave if I'm writing, so...
That's where the real writers are. You whip them and go,
yeah. We've constructed a small cave. Yeah. You do sort of sit there with headphones just staring at your screen, and then if anyone asks you a question, you go...
Fling your feces behind you.
It's really goddamn annoying when you're actually trying to make stuff.
It's like, we just want to go to lunch. I'm like, oh, leave me alone. Yeah. But that's pretty much... That was a terrible...
I totally blanked out.
This is one of those ones we would redo.
Yeah, Sean and I do the story together, the sort of core design aspects of the game, and then we end up splitting up so that Sean writes a lot of script, and I bother a lot of artists and occasionally poke programmers in the eye until something happens. And then those occasionally switch weirdly, except that I don't actually write dialogue. Don't ask me to write dialogue in the game.
Wow. All right, let's move on to Gary. Really horrible. So Gary, give us a history of where you come from. You were a games journalist, and you went from that to script writer. How does one make that transition?
I still don't know. the way I did it was kind of mostly by accident. I was very, very, very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time on a number of occasions. But yeah, I was the editor-in-chief of PC Gamer and grew up loving video games and also loved movies. And after having worked on PC Gamer for many years, managed to kind of jack that in and go off and go to Hollywood and write movies, and have had some success doing that. But still, I've always loved video games. It's always kind of been in my DNA, and obviously as video games have become more cinematic, and you've seen the movies and video games and TV shows all kind of coalesce and share storytelling disciplines. It worked out that I was able to kind of come back and apply what I had learned as a screenwriter back towards video games, which is really my first love. And Robert Kirkman and I are friends, and I managed to twist his arm when they were shooting the pilot into being a zombie on the pilot episode. It was kind of cool. To be one of the zombies that ate Rick's horse. That was cool.
No, wait, I have to stop. Do we have pictures of this? I hear that we have photos someplace.
Really?
Yeah, so that was...
There you go.
They did an amazing job on me. They had so many zombies in the horde scene in that Atlanta pilot. And I didn't know what kind of zombie I was going to be. That's like what they call an alpha, which is like full contact lenses, full prosthetic makeup. And there are zombies that just kind of have these crappy masks that don't look as good, that are at the back of the crowd. And I was waiting to be assigned Alpha, Beta, Charlie, whatever kind of zombie. And Greg Nicotero, who's the makeup genius on the show, who also did all the blood and guts for the Book of Eli, so I knew him already. He's like, what are you doing here? I said, Kirkman's going to let me be a zombie. I don't know what I'm going to be yet. He's like, come with me. And Greg did all the makeup for me personally, and so I got to have a really good time. There's a couple of scenes when Rick's being chased through Atlanta in the pilot episode where you get to see me pulling him down off the horse, so that was pretty cool. And then because of all that, and because Robert and I have the same agent, when they were doing the video game and the comic book license fell to Telltale, somebody called me and said, you should have a conversation with these guys. And initially I was very skeptical because I kind of thought initially that it could be just like an act. I didn't know who was developing it. Maybe it's an action game where there isn't really much of an opportunity to tell a story. But as soon as it said Telltale, I was like, sign me up, because I know these guys, I know the kind of stories, the kind of games that they make. I mean, it's right there in the title, they tell stories. And met with Sean and Jake and kind of clicked immediately. And they already had a lot of the broad strokes of the story laid down. So like episodes 1 and 2 particularly, I actually had very little input in those. Like the creation of the characters like Lee and Clementine and the main cast of characters, that's all these guys. But as we get later into the season, episode 3 and particularly 4, which I wrote, and 5, which I had a lot of input in the story, you'll see more of my influence in the game.
Yeah, it was nice because we'd been working so insularly for so long, and Gary came in with sort of this barometer of horrible for us. So everything that we would pitch that was like, oh, maybe we shouldn't go this far, he'd be like, no, we're going that far, which is great. I think the game wouldn't really be where it is when it's on its high notes.
Yeah,
without that sort of like, oh, I guess we should.
My thing, I guess, was kind of bring like the most perverted, horrible, miserable things I could think of. Drawing heavily on my own life experience, obviously. And
life at PC Gamer was rough.
I actually got one of the greatest compliments in my career came just this week, because we were in the dialogue booth with Dave Fenoy, who plays Lee, and he was reading my dialogue for episode 4, and at one point he put the script down and said, "You are one sick motherfucker."
I want to hear Lee say that.
He said, "Does your mama know you're writing this shit?" And I was like, "Thank you so much. It's the greatest compliment I could receive." But when we were breaking some of the story elements for 3, 4, and 5, I would pitch them a lot of things, and again, these guys would kind of recoil, like, "What the fuck are you? What? It's horrible." But then what we did, obviously, if there's one franchise, one property that gives you the opportunity to do that, it's the Walking Dead universe, because the comic and the TV show just kind of beat you up on a regular basis emotionally. It's like, how miserable can we possibly make you? So we felt like we had the license to do that with the game also, and we discovered really initially that whenever somebody around the table, not just me, would pitch something that made us go, I don't know if we could do that. That was like, well, no, we have to.
Now we must.
Because if that is the reaction that we're getting, that's the reaction that we want to instill in the player as well. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe they went there. And so hopefully, especially in 4 and 5, again, without any spoilers, if you think 3 is bad, 4 and 5.
Oh, it's not that bad.
I'm scared.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Now, not to derail us too much, but I heard a story with you involving a horse and anal beads. Is this?
Oh, not that story again.
You have to tell real quick. Make it quick.
Okay, just real quick, because it's not really about the game. But just
Anyway, this panel's ready.
I told this story.
Rated M, I told you. Get that baby out of here. It's Gary's baby.
I told this story once, and now it's going to dog me forever. I don't know, because it was never even broadcast. They did
You're
like
making it worse, just so you know.
just real quick. So when we did that horse scene, they put this rubber horse on the ground, and the Greg Nicotero guys are all coming over with like their stage blood and trying to make it as gory as possible. And they give you all these kind of weird stuff. Like they give you these condoms that they fill with blood, and they say, well, stick your hand inside the horse's guts with the condom in it, and as you pull your hand out, squeeze, and the blood will explode, and it'll just look really gross, and you'll get a good blood effect. And so we did a few tapes, and they kept coming over and saying, more intensity, like really fight each other over those horse guts, like you're really hungry zombies. And so we were kind of tearing apart, and at one point we had these fake rubber intestines, and I was kind of wrestling with this other guy. We had him like this, and at one point, like the rubber coating came off, and there's like a string of pearls underneath. And somebody said, "I think these are anal beads."
All right, I think that's the end of that story. As I say, you are visibly uncomfortable right up there, right here. Just like, oh God, make it stop the condoms, the
We
blood.
tried to warn you.
Yeah. All right, moving on. So how did this?
Now we're gonna talk about
Just
Bone,
forget that
the
happened.
game.
So how did this project begin? Who approached who about making this? Where did this start?
I think, God, was it like Comic-Con?
The
like
story
3
that I
years
heard
ago?
was that someone from Telltale approached Image and Skybound on the show floor of Comic-Con saying, "Are you guys interested in a video game?" And then it sort of went from there. I mean,
Yeah, it was somebody like identifying, hey, that totally works for our studio. And then I remember there was the compendium sitting in our like head of marketing's office one day, and I walked by and did like a double take and walked in and like in a big sticky note, let's say, I said like, get this, and just put it on the thing, and then yeah, just kind of I think we went back and forth, and obviously like because the comic book, like the zombies and the killings, like the killing of zombies or just the defense and all that is you just blast through those pages, they're really beautiful and really well rendered, but it's the human on human stuff. I mean, we've talked about this a ton, but that's really the stuff that's really the meat of The Walking Dead, and our studio is just set up to do that. Like that is what we do.
The reason this thing exists at all is because we pitched. I think we sent those guys some of the stuff we had done in the past, and we sent them some of the just other things that we liked that were visually similar and sort of in our wheelhouse, and said, here's the sort of game we want to make: story and character, weird, crazy choice stuff, and then occasionally you crush a guy's face and it looks sick, but that's not really what you do all the time. And I think that they thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, you just kind of take for granted that the cool zombie stuff is going to be there, and Sean's absolutely right. Like certainly when I was writing episode 4, the stuff that I enjoyed the most was the stuff where I kind of forget that I'm writing a zombie story at all, and it's just a human drama.
That's a good point.
You go through long periods where zombies don't show up because you don't want to overdo it. Zombies constantly attacking, it starts to get old, and the specialness of that is lost. But we let you forget almost that zombies are around, and then when they attack, you're, oh shit, zombies! Like, that's right. But really, and Robert Kirkman certainly understands this, and I think everyone that's had a successful iteration of The Walking Dead, I think hopefully us also, get that the zombies really are incidental. They really are just there to create the vice that squeezes these humans into these horribly dramatic, agonizingly, emotionally, problematic situations, and just see how long they go before they break. And so the zombies really are there, I think, just as kind of this crucible that we throw humans into. They're very cool because they eat people and they look cool, but I think they really are secondary to what we're trying to do.
So what was Kirkman's like? When you guys first presented this to him, what was his reaction? Or like, what did he say? Like, you have to have this? Or like, how did he respond to this?
It's got to have zombies in it.
It's got to have zombies.
It's funny, like, he's not the most effusive guy. He's really kind of thoughtful, and like, he's gregarious, but we pitched him the story. Remember that?
I
was like, that sounds about right. And we went, okay. And he went, yeah. I just feel like The Walking Dead to me. We talked for maybe a couple more minutes. Then Kevin was there. We like ate some pad thai and like made a video game. But like, it's like that was like the first pitch, and then it's sort of as we've been.
Oh no, he had one note. He was like,
oh, he did.
That Frank guy, name him something else. Don't call him Frank. So we renamed him Kenny. He's like, oh, that's Kenny's fine. It's good.
Yeah. So, and I think that was a testament to like we'd obviously done a lot of due diligence about making it feel like what we thought the comics felt like. And also, he's been incredibly he set it all up to succeed and then sort of said, I believe in this, go. And
we hear really, really nice stuff when episodes come out where he's just like, holy shit. I'm like, oh, good. Good.
I'd love to imagine him playing it, just like, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's been, it's been really great.
It's actually interesting. I think about that sometimes. I think about the fact that he knows the general gist of our story, but he doesn't know all of the super intimate details, and I'm sure the intimate details. But it's got to be kind of weird to be that guy, to be playing this game that you've given your blessing to, and that you've heard the pitch and you like it. Like, we've shown him demos of the game, and at times when we've got Gary here and stuff. But like, to a certain degree, like compared to the comic book and the TV show, which he writes every line of dialogue. He's in the writer's room for the TV show. He's a producer on it. Like, there's got to be times when Robert Kirkman is playing something that says The Walking Dead on it, and then just goes, "Holy shit!" And that's awesome to me. Like, just to think about that. So hopefully that happens.
I think the thing that really has allowed these guys to really fly with this was really kind of the conceptual genius of just telling a totally original story within the universe and not feeling shackled to telling Rick and Shane and Laurie's story all over again. Obviously, the TV version is very much an adaptation of the comics, and they've given themselves some license to kind of go off the main spine of the story, but it's basically, the same story beat for beat that you saw in the comics. And I don't think anybody really wanted to play a slightly different version of that again. And so to come up with Lee and Clementine and this totally different cast of characters has been very, very liberating. We can chart our own course, we can do whatever we want, we can and do and will kill anybody we like. There are no sacred cows because they're established in the comic books and have to live for a longer time. So the only thing that we have to stay truthful to is the tonal quality of the universe, the fact that it is bleak, and the mythology of the universe. And things like we can't just jump 10 years forward in time because Robert hasn't established where the Walking Dead universe is in 10 years. So there are some parameters, but they're kind of mythological and tonal parameters. There are no story or character parameters at all, except when occasionally a character from the comics may cross over into our story. Obviously, that has to remain canon. But for the most part, we have much more latitude to create a story than a licensee that took the actual storyline may have had.
So what kind of initial stuff did you guys have? What kind of, you have this established world. Obviously, you had to feel your way through to come up with new characters, a new story. That must have been hell. How did you?
It was really fun, actually. It was super
We've talked
fun.
about this a little bit before, but it definitely. Actually, Clementine was one of the first things that showed up. She was in stories all the way back to when it was Clementine and her brother, who was this sort of slightly washed up bro-ish dude who got in over his head.
Yeah, it was about Clementine.
Weird,
it was original. Well, I can actually tell you. I remember exactly how it fell down because I remember you were the one who sniffed out what was wrong with it. It was originally Clementine, and Clementine was a really self-indulgent creation. By the way, I was like, oh, it was the first thing, but it was Clementine and her brother. And the idea was that their dad was never around, and their mom was estranged, and he was 26, 27, and just taking care of his little sister. But they were many years apart in age.
This was well before we had any art or character designs or anything.
Yeah, we had that one concept art of the stairs.
Yep. Oh yeah, we had one drawing of stairs with a zombie at the bottom.
It's really cool. It's actually still a really cool thing. Cool. It's really enigmatic, but. And the issue was, we kind of talked about it, and we came around and around on it, and I had written sort of the first 5 minutes of the game where that was the case, and you're asleep in your bed, but it's the afternoon because you were working all night, and you live in this old country house. It's sort of ramshackle and falling apart, and you guys can't put any money into it, and Clementine comes and wakes you up and says, this guy is being weird, and you're Earl, I think was the guy's name, down the street, yeah. And then you go, what? And he goes, yeah, he was being weird, he chased me. And
he pulled my hair.
He pulled my hair, and then your character sits up and goes, oh, and then your first choices come up, and it's I'm gonna beat the shit out of this guy, or what? That doesn't sound like Earl, and all this stuff. But it turns out, Earl's obviously a zombie, and Clementine, it's the first zombie you see, and it's this one encounter. He comes to your house and is knocking on the door. So that we like that. That sounds cool, right? But the issue was having, I think the guy's name was Jim.
Yep.
It was having the brother and Clementine. As they already had all this history and all this baggage, they were family. It was too much to ask you guys, or just the players, to take on. How are we gonna get all this backstory out? How are we gonna get the story of the mom? I wish mom was here. How do you get all that stuff out? It's just way too. It's such just too big of a writing task, and it's not fun. So we wanted a character with baggage, but we wanted him to be somebody new, and we still really like this little girl. So Lee kind of was born out of pragmatism.
I think actually Lee at some point was a completely different story. That we said, okay, what if you're this other guy who's this college professor and stuff? And then at some point when we were having a story meeting, we said, oh, what if you just what if this car accident happens and then you come over a hill and you run into Clementine? We're like, oh, Clementine!
Yeah.
I remember her. So, and then we sort of had a couple threads that slowly got woven together into that. Also, let the record show, oh God, we can't talk about episode 3! Nothing's in that episode, it's fine.
I mean, you should definitely get it. You should definitely buy it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really good.
It's really good. But I wanted to talk about something
So disingenuous.
super awesome that I
Good
can't
job.
talk about.
You totally saw the note.
I know.
I think that Lee Clementine relationship is by far the most amazing thing that these guys have created with the story. And it's certainly the part of the whole thing that I felt most pressure and most responsibility as it was handed to me to write episode 4, was that being true to that relationship. Because it's not easy to do. I love the idea of this guy that was, not a father, not ready to be one, and yes, kind of become one anyway through necessity. And in particular, the creation of Clementine, which I think, the way that these guys do it, there's 3 elements. There's voice acting, there's writing, and then there's kind of the facial animation and the visual aspect. And they all have to come together and create a true character. And with children, it's particularly difficult to do, because in film and television and in video games also, it's very easy for children to kind of fall into that trap of being precocious and irritating, and you just kind of want them to die.
You don't know how,
she can't sound smarter than she is.
That's
that's always every movie. It's like,
code
oh,
of
that
Fanning.
kid is so smart.
I feel like up until about the day before we started pitching the design to people, you and I were like, do we keep Clementine in the game? Is she just going to be the most bratty, annoying thing? Is everyone going to hate this kid? Or is the forums just going to be filled with people saying, I want to kill this stupid little girl sidekick? Like, escort mission, like whatever. And we're like, no.
And even when the first auditions came in, and we were like, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do?
Well,
oh my gosh! And we were all by that point we were across the Rubicon with Clementine.
Well,
we weren't designing her out of the game,
right.
and just the idea.
At first, it's because we said maybe we should try casting a girl who's actually Clementine's age, and just let's see if it works. And all of them sounded exactly like little girls, but because we were like, there's no way we're not just gonna get like some woman to play a girl. Lame. Oh my God, Melissa Hutchinson's audition is so good, but all these, but she's an adult, but these little girls are not that. Okay, it's her, and then thank God. But yeah.
I first met the woman that played Clementine a couple of weeks ago when we were doing VO, and she's a grown woman. I'm like, what? This isn't Clementine. And she would go, watch, and she would do the voice, and I'm like, it's freaking me out. That's weird. And I would have to we would sit in the other room, and you can see them through the soundproof glass doing the voice, but I had to look the other way because it was too weird seeing that voice come out of her.
And what else has she done? She's done a bunch of, wasn't she like Edna Strickland or
Yeah, she's
something?
Edna Strickland in the Back to the Future games. People
what?
who've played the Sam & Max game, she's Stinky, the diner waitress.
It's bizarre. It's so strange.
Scoops.
Yeah. So I have to ask, what is to you guys, what is the point of Clementine? I mean, obviously you put a kid in there
What
for
is
a
the
reason.
point?
Why does she
Why
exist?
is she in there?
This is not some existential question. Like, why did you guys put her in there? What does she do?
There's a really, can we just, all the way back, I think that what we actually said is people are playing this who play video games. If we just make you a strong, able-bodied adult male, why the hell would you actually stick around with all of these fucked up people?
That's exactly what
why
it
would
was.
you not just bounce and want to leave all the time? And we said, okay, well, if we can make this girl who is in your care and make people actually care about them, which was a huge risk. If we can actually create suspension of disbelief in a video game, maybe someone will actually believe that they should stick around and deal with all this insane stuff because there's a little girl who actually matters. Whereas if you're just a dude, you're just video game dude man. Like
You're too big of an asset to a group like this. It's like once everything, because everything gets horrible. Like episode 2, everybody's just depressed and starving. Like if you're Lee, who's 37, like pretty able-bodied, you're just gonna opt out. Guys, I'm just gonna make my own way. So I mean, that's exactly what.
And it really is astonishing to me to look at reviews and look at people on forums talk about how they're related to the characters in the game. And I think it's great that most of these games, these post-apocalyptic type stories are about personal survival, and yet here is a game where you mostly are concerned with the survival of someone else. Your job is to kind of take care of this precious package, this little girl, and it's not just about her physical survival, it's about her emotional survival. It's like, even if this ever ends, which of course it won't, but even if the situation ever gets better, what's going to be left of this little girl at the end? The horrible things that she's seen and witnessed, is she even going to be, a viable, emotional human being at the end of it? And to see people talk about it, how, I'll do anything to protect this little girl, and I get vaguely threatening messages from people. You better not hurt Clementine.
That's all me. Just saying.
They're really,
It's
really.
actually just Melissa Hutchinson.
The degree, yes, I want to be in season 2. The degree to which people feel protective towards that girl in a real way, in a real emotional impact, is, I think, absolutely unprecedented in video games. It's incredible.
Yeah. How you better not do anything to this collection of polygons with a JPEG
Yes.
smushed over the front of it. Like what?
I've reset my PlayStation over that. Like I can't read the text on my. I have a 4x3 TV. It's horrible.
What?
And yeah, I know. So sometimes I can't read what it says, and I'll choose the wrong option, and it's like
We
fuck
have
off,
to-
Clementine, and I'm like,
Get
"Whoa!"
Angel in your settings,
Because then she'll just go in the back, and that'll be it.
Like black and white grandma kitchen TV.
You're
with
playing-
your,
Yeah,
like,
no, it's
yeah,
literally
file.
just like it's me against the screen, and no matter how close
play-
you are, you can't see it. It's horrible. I'm actually playing on a watch.
I was gonna say you're playing on a TV and like it's like in a convenience store in
I've got-
1987.
Yeah, no, it's, with my face against the window.
AJ has his PS3 wired up to the TV analog input on a Game Gear.
It's horrible. It's horrible. But anyway, yeah, no, I'll literally like get upset and like, I guess you can't say rage quit, like fear quit, Clementine quit, out of that because yeah, I'm like, I just told Clementine to jump off a cliff
I know you're a
or
little
do something
technologically
terrible.
behind, but you know that when you turn the TV off, the game is still actually running.
That, you know, I was wondering about that.
Yeah,
I
that's
come back
what-
and
that's-
he's just tapping his foot.
Yeah, that's what's going on.
Let's move on. So how do you, so, you know, one of the risks you run with writing a child is them being really irritating. I mean, that's part of the, you know, thing of having kids. Well, that's what I was gonna say.
How dare you, Gary
Sorry,
Whitta.
just clearing my throat.
Like, I didn't want to give him
Some
food. I'm
people
like, I
really
hope he
like
dies.
duck. Actually, where's
That's-
Steve Gaynor? Steve
wrong?
Gaynor likes duck.
Does anyone here like duck?
Duck.
Don't say no.
It's like 15 people.
You know.
It's all right.
There was just a duck like fist dap that happened in the
What was the
But
question?
that is the
when I
thing,
asked?
right? I mean, just to get back to annoying kids, we kind of just talked about it a second ago, but it was some real fear. Like I don't know, Kevin, if we expressed it to you so much because we
We
didn't want
shielded you from the
we didn't
fear.
want you guys to
We didn't want to stoke the flames of fear.
Yeah, to lose confidence in us. But it's basically if Clementine Lee doesn't resonate episode 1, it's gonna be a long season.
Yeah.
You know, it's just gonna be like, well, this looks
We're
like
locked into
somebody's
this.
getting eaten in episode 2.
Just new characters. You can do that?
Yeah,
Halfway through.
if you don't believe in that little girl and don't care about that little girl, nothing matters, right? Because the whole show, the whole season is really built around that relationship. So it's amazing. And I tell you, it's amazing to me, even just like my own perspective on it. Like, I became a father halfway through writing episode 4.
Your perspective totally changed.
It
in
did.
between.
Parents-
It was amazing.
I sent Sean an email saying, by the way, episode 4 now ends with Lee and Clementine on a tropical island with unicorns, and nothing bad ever happened to her, ever.
Your Grinch heart grew 10 sizes.
Parents will tell you, and I bumped into Jerry from Penny Arcade at Comic-Con, and we were talking about this as his own perspective. Like, yeah, after I had kids, my perspective on writing about that relationship changed. Parents will often told me that after they become parents, they can't watch TV shows or movies where children are put in peril. They just can't handle it. And I was like, come on, it's just movies. But then it happens to you, and you're like, oh shit, yeah. So like, if the Lee Clementine relationship suddenly seems much more keenly felt in the second half of episode 4, you'll know the reason
You'll see
why.
the quick turn.
Yeah.
So, Gary, you come from obviously a little bit of a different background with writing screenplays and whatnot. Can you tell us what is the difference between writing, you know, a screenplay for a movie or a TV show versus a video game? And this has obviously got a lot more layers because you have.
Aside from the fact that you have to
ads.
write 2 phone books instead
Yeah,
of
basically.
There's a lot going on there.
The whole experience has been a tremendous. I've done consulting and some writing on video games before, but nothing to this level of depth where I've been involved at every. I mean, the last few weeks I was in Telltale's office every day, writing in their proprietary script writing tool. I was in all the VO sessions, so really, really closely involved. And it's been a tremendous learning experience for me. First of all, just on a conceptual level, like Sean and Jake, who are great, kind of story
Sean and Jake
cops
were
and
great.
gameplay cops. Yeah, they're just great. But I would come in and pitch them like a really cool story moment. They'd be like, yeah, that's cool, but like, what is there for the player to do? Because they're aware of the fact that you're serving 2 masters, as a gameplay master and a story master, and they both have to kind of be in this very fine balance. And like, they have an incredibly, like, they watch everything that players do through a microscope, because it's all online. Everything, all the data, and at a really granular level, gets reported back to. Like, you see how the stats are reported at the end of each episode. Like, you know how many punches Lee through or whatever. They also know how long you can go without player interaction before players start to tune out and go away. And it's really, really short. It's like 15 to 20 seconds. If you haven't given the player something to do, some reason to feel like they have agency, or they're really playing Lee, then they'll start to tune out. And oftentimes, like my first draft, I would just have Lee assert himself and say, well, we're going to do this, or I don't like you very much. And Sean would just go through because this needs to be a player choice. Why isn't this a player choice? Why isn't the player making this decision? And you realize that you can't have Lee. Lee can kind of like do minor things, but any time where you feel like, if I'm Lee, I might have done something different, that has to be a player choice. And so you have to write, 3 or 4 different ways that the story can branch, even if it's just for a brief time before it comes back to the spine. Every single time Lee does something of any consequence at all. So simply by volume, you're writing way much. I mean, I did like a word count, page count, and it was roughly a little over the equivalent of like 2 feature-length films for one episode. So by volume, you're writing a lot more. And then what is really crazy is the way that you, in no kind of writing that I've ever done before, like breaking story, there's a certain amount of logic involved. But when you're dealing with all the different, there's a scene, and again, no spoilers, but there's a scene in episode 4 that is so crazily consequential and branching. It's like, okay, but so in episode 3, Lee said this, and then this flag got triggered, and this happens, then this has to happen, or otherwise this happens, or this happens. And there's so many different ways to you have to write it, that by the time it was done and we had every single consequence flagged and we understood all the different ways that the scene could play out, I had to go lay in a dark room for like half an hour. Because it was like, oh my God, that was a nightmare.
One thing that I remember when we were talking about story stuff, especially late in the season, and I think, Gary, that this came in part from you doing more sort of feature stuff, is that you would often say, oh, this is the best version of it right here, this is awesome. And then we'd be like, oh God, okay, Gary thinks this one's the best. Now we have to make the other 3 also the best. Because they're all there. Like it's not, we have this situation where we'd be like, oh, so this happens, or this happens, this happens. And then your instinct was always, oh, pick the one that you respond to the most strongly, which is awesome. But then then I know Sean and I would always have to go, oh, Gary only likes 1 out of the 3. Your approach was always like, oh, this is awesome. We got this main channel right here. And then Sean and I were sitting there going, okay, we got 1/4. It's only a quarter of the way there. One channel's too good.
And that was the other thing I learned, is you can't ever really construct a player choice where one is clearly the way you would go and the other one is kind of the dumb choice. They all have to be kind of
you have to
equally
figure
weighted.
out how to get yourself equally excited about 4 insane different things.
And when they get the stats back, they ultimately want to see as close to a 50-50 split as possible, which is to suggest that there isn't any obvious solution. And so again, in episode 4, there are choices that, and you look at the choice and you think, well, maybe this looks kind of too 70-30 right now. What can we do to weight it back to 50-50 as much as possible? Let's change these elements and try to make it as agonizingly difficult, pick your poison, as possible. And absolutely, anytime we was like, well, clearly you would do this. Like anytime we would argue, like, no, you would do this, no, you would do that. We're like, great, this is the argument we want the players to be
that's
having.
the best.
That's when you know you've got a good choice.
When everyone in the writer's room starts getting into really heated arguments where everyone's annoyed at each other about like, well, that's obviously stupid because of this. And someone else like, well, it totally makes sense because this happens. Like, okay, write that down, and that's what Kenny would say, that's what this guy would say. And like, that's fine. But as far as the 50-50 thing, that is totally what we go for. When episode 1 came back and after a week, it was like, middle, yes. Doug Carley, we're like, damn it.
I tried to tell him, I said, guys, I think the players are going to choose the hot chick over the fat dude. What? They're like, no, Doug's really good with technology. He's a useful asset. Like,
Doug, where are you at?
Is Doug here? I saved Doug. So.
Not who saved Doug, who is Doug?
Over there, someplace.
Is Doug Tobacco here?
Oh, what? Did Doug not show up?
I'm Spotchik.
He's not get in?
Maybe he's hiding. Whatever.
Okay, so you're going to walk around PAX and you're going to see a guy who looks shockingly similar to the guy in the game. And actually, he's wearing the barrel oak shirt that Doug is wearing in the game.
He was wearing it today.
He's just hoping someone will recognize him.
We're only making him wear that shirt. We'll take it to the dry
our good friend Doug Tobacco is cosplaying at PAX today as Doug because he is Doug.
He had to sign over his release for his visage.
Yeah. And you can see it there in episode 1. By the time you get to that point where you've got to make that choice, which one you're going to save, those characters are established as both could be very useful assets to the group. Carly because she's very good with the gun, Doug because he's good with technology. But again, all things being equal, it then comes down to, I'm going to pick the thing where I think there might be like kind of a cool romance down the road as opposed to this dude over here. And I said, I'm telling you, it's going to be way Carly. And they went, no.
78-20.
76-14 or something?
So you guys not math.
It was that doesn't like
somebody managed to kill both of them.
We felt like we left some of why Doug is awesome on the table.
Yeah, so we actually talked about that.
Apologies to Doug, lovers everywhere, and
there is a Team Doug. To be fair, there are people that like
Doug.
Doug.
Is good. I like that there's a Team Doug.
The people, that's right.
Doug.
Yeah.
It's just me. I'm Team Doug. Great.
The people who saved Doug are very passionate about their choice to save Doug. So Doug boosters, we salute you. Also, I got to say Doug Boosters.
That's weird. So, with all those stats and everything, do you guys use that to screw with people? Or you're like, everyone chose this. Now we're gonna do the complete opposite.
You don't want to be the hoodwinky game. You know, we don't want to be the game where it's like, oh, we have the upper hand because we know people are playing it. So, oh, this is really gonna get them. You know, I think that's ultimately pretty cheap. So, you know, but we're looking more for sort of behavior stuff and sort of things that can be emblematic of future choices. You know, like a really good one. Episode 2 is Andy and Danny St. John, and there's a guy. Is it Danny with the pitchfork? Yeah. So you've got Danny at pitchfork point, and he's the first of the brothers that you encounter, and you can off him. And a lot of people are just, fuck yeah, yo, this is boom, pitchfork. And then Clementine sort of wanders out of the shadows, and everybody's like, oh my gosh. So then when they get to Andy, they don't do that. Like, because they're remembering, like, oh, I felt really bad when I killed that guy with that pitchfork.
Actually, best stat really quick about that, we know how many times people have punched Andy in the face, but also we know, like, punch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's like when you get X number of punches in, the camera, like the system is like, okay, they've been beating up this guy for a while. Cut to the wide shot of your entire crew just sort of like watching you beat in this guy's face, and the punches, and we have the Excel document, it's like, everyone, not that many people, nobody. So like, once it's like, oh, I'm not okay, you guys are watching this. Like, people just, they just stop, which is awesome.
And you know, it's important also to know, like, I think, it's not about that, like, those people are judging, like, we don't want people to feel like they're playing the game poorly, or we want to set up scenarios where you don't feel like the game is judging you, and especially, like, Clementine's not judging you. She's just sort of, like, absorbing,
she
right?
is. She's judging me.
She's judging you, AJ.
She's judging me.
Yeah. She says, buy a new TV, AJ.
We want you to feel like everything that you do is not necessarily good or bad, but it's valid.
You should be able to justify it to your friends, you know.
It's valid,
like, oh, I played the game and
horrible,
this is why I made the choice that I made.
I think justify it.
I think one of the benefits of doing an episodic game is that, you know, the game is out there as they're continuing to develop it. So it is interesting to see the stat reporting and also go on forums and see how people respond to different characters. And you can, to some extent, look at that and go, oh, maybe if players really like this, we might push it a little bit more this way or that way. But we certainly don't let that push us in any major direction. Like, we knew the ending of the season was known and decided upon before episode 1 shipped, and it hasn't changed and it will not change. And I don't think any amount of player hemming and hawing about, you know, what they see in second episode, well, maybe we should change it. No, the ending is I think it's locked because it's crazy to try and please the audience. Or you can try to please yourself and hope that the audience is there with you.
I think if anything, it's been just kind of validating, where we watch people play and go, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. Okay. Yeah. Oh, thank God. Okay, good. Because, like, if there was ever a time where we just saw some, like, if an episode came out and it was like 0, 100, 0, 100, 0, 100, we'd be like, okay, we got to rethink this stuff.
So I mean, we just use scenarios, that data, to make like emblematic choices for it. It's kind of what I'm ultimately trying to say. It's like, oh, what does it mean that Clementine's here for this choice? Things like that. You know, we're not like, oh, it's not like a one-to-one end around sort of deal.
It's not a one-to-one end around.
Not a one-to-one end around. That's whatever trademarked.
But
yeah, we knew the end of the season before I wrote the first word of dialogue for episode 1. So take that for what it's worth.
I mean, again, there are some questions.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you right here. Actually,
I feel like I
talking.
see AJ shuffling around. He's
hitting next on my PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So we're gonna open it up to you guys now. We're gonna do the Q&A, where we'll be joined by Kevin Bruner, the co-founder of Telltale Games, executive producer on Walking Dead, and CTO, whatever that means. All right, so how does this work exactly? How are we going to get people to ask questions? We got a microphone. Yay! I guess raise your hand, dance if you have a question.
I see what you mean.
My question actually has to do with the voice acting element of it. I've been a longtime fan of Telltale ever since Bone and basically throughout the entire history of Telltale.
Thank you very much.
Because adventure games are my favorite type of game, and Telltale is a perfect example of why it's still an important genre. So, you know, that's why I've been a big supporter of you guys. My question is how much did you factor into when you were casting? Like, when you got auditions, it's like, oh, this person sounds like Lee, or oh, this person definitely sounds like Kenny. You know, the connection between the script and the character. It's like, oh, well, yeah, well, the way this guy sounds, this is obviously the person we're gonna have to do it. We're writing.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually.
There's some characters in the game where we straight up were like, this dude who we know from previous Telltale stuff, you are already just straight up cast as this guy. But usually our audition process is we send out the casting sheet with the character photo and some sample lines of dialogue, and then all the regular guys who are on the Telltale stuff and on The Walking Dead, both because it said The Walking Dead on the box and because we deliberately cast a wider net, we got a lot of people in. But we end up for every part just listening through 3 or 4 dozen auditions.
It's actually a good story about Lee, and this is like
a good story about Lee.
Yeah, casting Lee. We originally cast somebody who isn't Lee. Like, we cast a guy, recorded the whole first episode, and we're like, oh, this isn't working. And that was like
that was a bold move for us.
Yeah,
also.
that was never done that before. And meanwhile, we made an iOS game based on Law and Order, and there was a really small team like churning out like 7 episodes of really fast on iOS, and they're really cool. It's a really kind of like fun, digestible game. And this guy Javier, who's a cinematic artist, kind of says like, "Oh, there's a guy in Law and Order who's really good." And I'm like, yeah. And I was like, put in my email, and then I went like, well, let me actually hear this guy. And we walked over and listened to him. And was like, oh my god, that guy is perfect. And that's Lee. Actually, it's a Dave.
I forgot that Dave Finnow was in Law and
He
Order.
was just discovered by
available on iOS platforms and PC.
But yeah, so it's like it's a lot of gut. I mean, Gary casted a lot of stuff for episode 4 just because Jake and I have been so overwhelmed. I know you were part of the casting process. Like, you just kind of listen and you close your eyes and see if you can see it coming out of the character that's already been,
Yeah, we had some.
built.
There were some new characters to show up in episode 4 that we had to cast, from scratch, and major characters. And so you want to get the voice exactly right, and it's easy to whittle down the ones that are clearly wrong from the ones that you like. But once you get down to the last 3 finalists, and there's really very little daylight between them, it's really, really hard to pick. Yeah. And you often don't know until you really get them in the booth. And we do callbacks. We have them come back and do more emotional stuff. Let's see what kind of range you've got. But it's really, really tough. And I discovered that voice actors don't have headshots because often what they look like is no indication, obviously, what the voices they can do. You just go by their voices, and it's really, really interesting because they do bring so much to it. Like you get 3 actors read the exact same lines and put them on the exact same visual character, but they'll seem completely different.
Yeah, if anyone else had been Kenny, I have no idea what we would have done this season.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for asking that. That's a great question.
Oh, and AJ, the 80s kid in me, thanks you for Marty.
Oh, you're welcome. From the Marty and me.
Hi, my name is Brad, and I actually live in Macon.
Oh, cool.
Sweet.
So,
sorry that it looks nothing like Macon.
No, you did a pretty good
That
job.
drugstore is based on a drugstore in Miami.
No, you did a pretty good job making it a dump.
But it's fine. Don't patronize us.
Yeah. But I don't know who's responsible for it, but I just wanted to say thanks for the references.
Chuck Jordan.
I think, Chuck Jordan, who some people who've played the Sam & Max games know, he was the lead designer on Sam & Max: The Devil's Playhouse. He wrote a lot of Season 1 and Season 2 of Sam & Max and Strong Bad. He left Telltale, I think, to go work at Imagineering, Walt Disney Imagineering, which is awesome, God, best. But we brought him back in. He came in to help with story stuff and to do the original story pitch for the 2nd episode. But Chuck grew up in Georgia, so he knew a ton of stuff about that area.
Yeah.
Also, Chuck left around the same time as Harrison Pink, who was the designer in episode 3, and he's another guy who lived.
Harrison Pink showed up.
Harrison showed up, and Harrison lived in Savannah for a lot of his life as well. So we've had 2 Georgia natives on the design team, which has been really helpful for trying to get things to feel as legit as we can for.
And I think that's cool.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it's really hard to get games where it's just I'm just going to make a direct reference to a place the way a show or a movie
when
would.
they reference the Cherry Blossom Festival or.
Oh, I actually looked that up on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
So there you go. That was me. Yeah.
I'm just sitting there I'm the guy.
We have this thing called the internet. It's amazing.
Well, I'm just sitting there I'm the one guy that got that knows it's a real thing.
Yeah, but that's why you do it. It's the game needs to feel authentic. And that's just all the way through. From the characters to whatever. I just want it to feel like a real thing.
Right. But you could have easily just made up something or whatever. But
why? Somebody's already made it up for me. I'm going to steal it.
I just wanted to say
so much work the other way.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mike, thank you was creepy.
Thank you. Yeah.
Spoon. It's a tick shirt. That's okay.
So I wanted to say, I think the Walking Dead game is probably come together better than any of the other previous Telltale games that I've played. And I've loved the previous ones. I just think that this one is no, it's a good thing. It's firing on all cylinders, and I really like that.
Thank you.
What I wanted to ask is, what specific lessons have you taken away from previous games that you guys have done that have informed this game?
I think The Walking Dead was us taking every lesson from every game. Like Sean and I weren't directly on Jurassic Park, but we were definitely watching Jurassic Park, and then a lot of our episode directors are from Jurassic Park. I worked on Back to the Future. When that was going on, we were working on Poker Night. And Sean and I were also we did a lot of work on the Puzzle Agent game. So like the Puzzle Agent games gave our art team a lot of experience with sort of getting that hand-drawn look to work in 3D. Poker Night, we learned a lot about weaving dialogue in with a bunch of action inside of our engine, because that's a game where 4 characters had to have conversations while playing cards, while someone is maybe busted out and someone is in, and all this other weird crap. Jurassic Park, we put a ton of work into our engine to hit the mark that we hit for Jurassic Park, which people have different feelings on that, obviously, but for The Walking Dead, we had so much at our disposal from that game, and also our animators and our cinematics team got a ton of experience with how to do action sequences through that.
Yeah.
And then in Back to the Future, you can tell someone that your name is Michael Corleone, and it remembers that across the season, so that helped us a lot.
Yeah, you know.
That was just one.
You just sort of pick the things that are all working, and you know.
Yeah.
And you also have your I'm a fan of our games. I work there, but I felt like it'd been so long since I had shipped a game, because I kind of hopped a couple. So you just sort of you look at stuff and you go, man, when my number comes up, there's a couple things I really want to do.
Yeah, I think I've been at Telltale since the second Bone game, and Sean, your first game there was the third Wallace and Gromit episode. So we've been
classic.
I think I'd say kind of our mission was to reinvent or modernize adventure games from day one. In every game we've ever done, back to Bone, Wallace and Gromit, we've been pretty much trying to solve a single problem that we thought about with adventure games for that particular game. So Bone had a specific thing it was trying to solve. Wallace and Gromit, Poker Night, Back to the Future, Sam and Max, Monkey Island, Jurassic Park were all very focused on one or two.
So poking at very specific things.
Yeah, what we perceived as problems with modernizing adventure games. Walking Dead is the first game that all of those things have kind of we're going to the bucket list, and it's all going in this one.
Yeah,
and we're going to make it all about crazy
some of it
choices.
works. I mean, there's still a lot that I think we feel like we've got a lot still to go. I think we all look at Walking Dead and go, oh God, basically all the time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're all super proud of the stuff that's gone in there, because it is the result of what is now 7+ years of us making a lot of these games. So the answer is everything.
Yeah. Good question.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I wanted to ask about Lee and the fact that you've given him a background component that's quite a big part of the story and impacts the dialogue choices, but it's not something that we as a player kind of understand about him yet, and whether that was kind of, for me, it's kind of the only point where I become slightly disconnected from Lee as a character, and whether that was something you're worried about, whether you thought of going down the amnesia route or something like that, or just making him more of a blank character that the player just kind of immune themselves on.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think about that a lot. And I think there's a couple things I wanted to solve. I wanted Lee to have done something bad already, and it was really personally, this is personal outside of sort of the group discussion at Telltale why we're gonna make the game. This is probably the first time Kevin's heard this, but for me personally, I was just curious if we could get people to come along, and I think it's really interesting if you can get players to empathize and to carry someone else's baggage. And that was just sort of a question for me. And I said, it looks like I have an opportunity to do that right now, and people are gonna let me do it. It's okay, let's see what happens. And it was never on the table to make a character. Then the amnesia route is just sort of I just wouldn't have been right at all.
It seems, I think for us, we never even really talked about giving Lee amnesia or having him be a blank slate, but I think for us, if we had decided this is a character who knows nothing about his surroundings, that would suddenly have to just be what the entire season's about, because you can't do a game that is all about story and is all about player choice but also it would suddenly just become the elephant in the room and this guy doesn't know who he is, and he's sort of trying to figure out who he is and what his past is. But that's not really what's important, because you're trying to survive in the zombie apocalypse. So we sort of had to say, this is this guy, and the moment he kicks out the window of that cop car, he feels like his life has changed, and what he's going to do with that is up to you. And that was,
we felt like giving him a fresh restart, like literally breaking out of the handcuffs in the cop car, like, cheesy metaphor. But like that was enough, it's really come along with it now. And but like everybody's done bad shit in their lives, everybody has regrets.
killed senators.
Everybody just killed somebody,
right?
But I also didn't want the first time Lee kills a person for it to be the first time. It was just something I thought about a little bit.
I think it's a really interesting question as well as we figure out more about how to tell stories in the interactive medium, because it's still very, very nascent. I think we're still kind of basically in like the silent movie era of figuring out how to do this. And I think you kind of take each project on its own merits, like whether or not it's best to create a somewhat fully defined character like Lee, and then let players fill in the last little touches through their choices, or do you create like someone that's more of basically kind of an empty vessel, like a Gordon Freeman who never speaks and has no personality of his own, so the player can kind of fill that vessel with their own personality and kind of role play them a little bit within the parameters of the game. When you're doing storytelling, like, you have to define the character somewhat, and then let the player hopefully kind of add their little tweaks through the choices they make.
Also, we can you can not talk a lot if you want. It makes Lee
you
really
can be
creepy.
Gordon Freeman. You never have to say anything.
He speaks something. Yeah, I'll speak when you're not around.
But that's why we specifically describe the game as a tailored story. It's not, you're not crafting every single aspect of it, but you're definitely steering the story along. Gary was the one who came up with the phrase "a tailored story."
You buy that suit and we make it fit you real nice, but you're not creating clothes from scratch.
Yeah, it's like the analogy I use is the difference between like buying a suit off the rack and like having someone like a bespoke suit tailored for you. Because and this is going to sound kind of artsy fartsy, but I think if we do really do our jobs right, we sit around and I come in as a consultant and we all talk about what the story should be. But when we do our jobs right, I think we hand the story off to you in an unfinished form, and we say, you finish it. Like, you become the last creative collaborator in this process. We've taken it to like the last 95%, but it's just like if we were if we were doing a straight up TV episode, like we invited you to come in and say, well, what do you think should happen to finish this episode out? You make those choices through the process of playing the game. And I think when we get it right, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
All right, we're getting very close on time, guys, so let's make these answers as quick as possible so we get through some more guys. So
yes or no questions only now.
Okay, so first off, the first time you ask Clementine about the salt lick, and her response is maybe. That was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
I said that. I think that was cut out of a Playing Dead episode, but I was like, that's my favorite part.
Yeah. At that point, I was really on the fence about her. I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, I love her.
Okay,
Talk to Clementine early on in episode 3.
Exciting. Also, again with the salt lick, whose idea was that? In the cooler.
So that was
Who came up with the salt lick?
I'm not going to say that I came up with it because I didn't.
Oh, Jay, come
No,
on.
I
Don't
didn't.
be bashful.
No. That actually came. I think part of that came from Sean Ainsworth, who's one of the guys leading episode 4. But that is one of the first things that existed before there was any story. Where like you got to get trapped in a room with a huge dude with nothing to kill him, and then just like you pull a filing cabinet off the wall and bash his head in or something. So like I don't remember where that came from, but that existed before the rest of the story. And episode 2 secretly was designed from that out in both directions.
Yeah.
Probably not secretly.
There's like an old list of just sort of like cool scenarios of like things that can happen in a world like this, and that was on it.
Meat and then Chuck was like, I think I found a place for it. What if Paula Deen and her sons were cannibals? And it diverted from there. But that was the big effect. They trapped him in a meat locker,
Like,
and Larry
listening.
gets bit. Or Larry doesn't get bit, Larry has a heart attack. And we're like, oh God, that's the episode. So that's where that came from.
As a kid who grew up in a small farming community, I've always wanted to do that.
You've always wanted to bash
I
it
was
up,
like,
bash it up.
kill him! It was great!
Well, it's like, so we got the guy from Macon, we got the person who always wanted to bash in a salt lick.
Perfect, it was perfect.
Good. Tailored.
For you.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I appreciate that, unlike Rick, who's a good guy before the apocalypse and good guy after, or the wife beater who's beaten his wife before and after, or scumbag Nazi, that Lee is a guy who's done bad things for probably bad reasons, and you get to be him as a character and see if he becomes a hero or how he changes after the apocalypse. And to that end, Gary, you know Robert. will we see Lee or Clementine, assuming that they survive this ordeal, in the comics anytime?
I can't speak to that because there are business concerns and people way above me like Robert and the guys at AMC that would make those decisions. But I can tell you that we have geeked out internally about the kind of the fantasy of like Clementine showing up in the comics or in the TV show, and actually have the crossover go back the other way. It's very nice to have Herschel show up in the video game or Glenn or whatever, but to feel like we are as legitimate, because I feel like we've earned it. I feel like it's as legitimate an iteration of The Walking Dead as the comics or the TV show at this point.
Yeah.
And I think the greatest validation of that would be to have Robert to invite us or ask us to put one of the characters we created into his comic or in the TV show.
Like Duck.
We don't, yeah, like Duck. We don't, there's no way to know if that would ever happen, but I think I heard some story about like AMC were initially kind of very frosty about like our game at first. We didn't know how it might affect their show, but once the game came out, they suddenly started to get much more friendly when they realized how good it was. So who knows what could happen, but certainly I think creatively we would be extremely receptive to that. But there's a lot of weird businessy type things that would have to happen for that to be real.
That was a great question.
Oh,
Thank
no,
you.
we are
I mean, I'd like to get into it more.
We got the sad time sign. I'm sorry, but before we go, as promised, everyone here gets an exclusive Walking Dead item as a thank you for your support. It's a poster that we'll see on the screen. No? Maybe? Well, you'll see it in your hand at some point.
Yeah. You'll get this. You'll get a limited set.
You'll get a That's a terrible poster.
All of us looking that way.
But it's extremely exclusive. You can only get it here right now at this panel as a thank you for showing up and supporting us.
Yeah, they're outside. They're outside. Don't go in there. Yeah. We'll meet you guys outside. Yeah.
And each one is numbered. Even sexier, I know. There's an ooh through the crowd. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time on Playing Dead.